Hey guys, this is Jimmy coming at you with another video for you guys today, and I might as well take this opportunity to conduct a review of my thoughts concerning about the 2021 Royal Rumble pay-per-view event. The show was held at the Tropicana Field, aka the WWE Thunderdome in Florida. So as far as the women's tag team title bout is concerned, now it was believed that this was going to be on the main show, but it turns out that this was bumped over to the kickoff show. So we did have the women's tag team title bout with Charlotte and Asuka defending their belts against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. So this is kind of a rematch from TLC, and going back to what I was saying, this eventually the rematch that takes place happens to be on the kickoff show. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler did manage to regain the women's tag team title belts thanks to interference from Ric Flair and Lacey Evans. So there was multiple occasions where Charlotte was the legal person in the ring. Looked like she had Nia and Shayna beat, but then at some point Lacey kept interfering in the match, and then I think Flair offered Lacey some brass knuckles or some foreign object, and then she basically uses that object to knock out Charlotte. So this allowed Nia and Shayna to successfully regain the women's tag team titles. Since I normally don't discuss in depth about some of the pre-show matches, but I just figured this was pretty significant enough to make discussion about this. And then we get to the official main show, and surprisingly, the pay-per-view opened up with a WWE title match between Drew McIntyre going as champion, and he's defending the belt against Goldberg. So this was actually a pretty short match, which was pretty expected for a lot of the Goldberg matches that have happened in recent years, and especially given his health. But, you know, going into it, a lot of folks were very nervous about this match because there could have been a possibility of Goldberg potentially winning the WWE title from Drew McIntyre and possibly challenging maybe Roman Reigns, even despite being on SmackDown. But, you know, people were just kind of speculating that maybe they're going to unify the WWE and Universal titles. But that actually was not the case here tonight. And, yeah, this match was very brief. And there was still a lot of fun going on, like when they're brawling at ringside. Drew McIntyre just plowing through Goldberg right away. So, yeah, they're brawling through the crowd aisle, and you know, Goldberg and Drew are like going at it. And then basically being Goldberg, he's just delivering spear. And then even a jackhammer, but then like Drew kicks out of it. And I was actually afraid that Goldberg might win this match. But yeah, basically he was using kind of the same strategy that he used against Braun Strowman at WrestleMania 36 last year. But we all know what happened last time, like when he tried to do that, and that backfired. And as far as his match with Drew is concerned, this was no exception. So Drew manages to fight back with a series of Claymore kicks and successfully defeats Goldberg in the middle of the ring and successfully retains the WWE title. So Drew and Goldberg end up shaking hands, showcasing a sign of mutual sportsmanship. Just it's a pretty short but harmless match, but it was still fun with the limited amount of time that they got. So I can't complain too much looking back at it, but, you know, it kind of felt like, you know, what was the whole point of this match? I mean, you know, Goldberg isn't as much of like a consistent wrestler like he was back in the day. Like, I mean, he was fine, like, as far as his physical shape is concerned, but, you know, even after the match, you know, Goldberg looked pretty exhausted, and you could tell he's, you know, getting up there in age. I mean, he's in his 50s, if I'm not mistaken. But granted, this, you know, eventually this match, you know, did manage to entertain me regardless. But yeah, I just hope Goldberg was okay. I mean, I know he gets a lot of flack, especially with this performance in some of these recent matches that he had. Undertaker. Even at the time, I thought like Drew McIntyre and Keith Lee could have gone at it, because I know they did a match on Raw, but instead of like Royal Rumble. But, you know, in hindsight, it seemed like, you know, the Drew and Goldberg match probably turned out to be for the better, considering now Keith Lee's got tested positive for COVID. this match was still fine. I mean, it's a short, harmless match, but it kind of, at the same time, it kind of feels like, what was the whole point of this? And, like Drew McIntyre could have like easily sit out of this pay-per-view without defending the belt. But, I mean, Drew's continuing to show that he could hang around with the big boys, especially when it comes to these legends that come in and out of the company for at least like a one-off match. So, I mean, it does solidify Drew McIntyre as a top guy in your company. So, it's what it is. But, Drew McIntyre successfully retained the WWE title from Goldberg in this match. Then we get to the SmackDown Women's title bout. And that happens to be Sasha Banks going in as the champion, and she's defending the belt against Carmella. So, like the women's tag team title bout from the kickoff show, this happens to be a rematch from TLC as well. And it's not as good as the match that they had in December, but I mean, it was still pretty passable. And, Carmella got to show some offense. And, she's definitely looking great in whatever that ring gear that she had that night. Anyway, so, there was actually a pretty infamous spot where Carmella tried to go for a suicide dive, but it was like some kind of like crossbody of sorts. But I don't know if she meant to do a suicide dive, but I mean, you could tell like the way that she sells that move, it kind of came off pretty clunky, even watching that. And Sasha had to like check to see if Carmella was okay, and thankfully she is okay. Reginald tried to interfere in this match. Sasha did an amazing head scissors on him. And, Reginald kept continuing to interfere in the match to the point where the referee had no choice but to bar him from ringside. So Sasha hits her Three Amigos frog splash combination, paying tribute to Eddie like she normally does. Carmella did manage to fight back. She locks in the code of silence, but Sasha fights out of it. And, eventually Carmella, following a series of kicks on Sasha. So it seemed like she had the match in her favor. Like, it could be a matter of time where she could potentially win the women's title. But just when Carmella tried to pick up Sasha at the last moment reverses into the bank statement. Carmella taps out of it, and Sasha successfully retains the SmackDown Women's title. So this was a pretty solid match. It's not one of my favorite matches of the night, but I mean, it's still pretty passable of a match. And it'll be interesting to see, like, now that Sasha's still champion, that she'll likely continue to defend the belt throughout the next month or so. I mean, I know we have like 2 pay-per-views in between this and WrestleMania, which is completely bizarre. I mean, like, Elimination Chamber is one thing, but then you got stuff like Fastlane, which is like, really? And this just happens to be kind of like the after effects of the brand split pay-per-views that they did for a time, and then once they decided to make all their shows inter-branded. So it just kind of had me thinking as to what's the point of keeping Fastlane around? I could see Sasha taking that woman's title belt in the WrestleMania, and it's just a matter of like who's going to challenge who. And I'm going to get into that in the next match that preceded Sasha versus Carmella. So speaking of that, we transition over into the first out of the 2 Royal Rumble matches, and this happens to be the 30-woman Royal Rumble match. There's a lot that goes on throughout this Royal Rumble match, so I'm likely going to forget certain moments that took place, but I'm going to try my best to kind of backtrack exactly what happened to the best of my ability. Number 1, we had Bayley, the former SmackDown Women's Champion, and number 2, representing Raw, as Bayley's representing SmackDown. So over on Raw, we have the return of Naomi, which was definitely a shocker. And yeah, I mean, the Rumble started off really well, and Bianca Belair started at number 3. And so basically, she's the odds-on favorite to potentially win the Rumble that night. Billie Kay would be number 4. And I think by this point, like, she had already broken away from the Iconics. Yeah, I was very disappointed that they broke her off from that Peyton Royce. I definitely thought they had some amazing chemistry, and it's a very shame they broke them up. But I thought she did fine here. I mean, she was really hilarious throughout most of this match, and making the most out of this singles run. So I definitely like what they were doing with her here. Shotzi Blackheart from NXT. So I'm very unfamiliar with some of the NXT wrestlers since I don't follow it on a consistent basis. But I thought it was really cool where she was riding on that battle tank, which, kind of reminds me of DX in a way. And it doesn't help that her hair color being green is like the signature color for DX. So I thought that was actually pretty funny. But I definitely like what I saw from her. But she didn't last very long, unfortunately. So Shayna Baszler, who had already, so she had, I believe she might have already entered the ring at that point, or hadn't entered just yet. But eventually she would get eliminated by Shayna. Yeah, Shayna was already in the ring. So what the hell I'm saying? But so the match continued on. Jillian Hall also made a surprise one-off return, so reprising that singing gimmick that she had in the late 2000s. I definitely liked her chemistry with Billie Kay. That was just freaking hilarious, and the whole Billie and Jilly connection. Let's see, Victoria. So we got a couple like Ruthless Aggression female wrestlers showing up, and she still looks really great for her age. I was very disappointed that she didn't come back to that song from Tattoo, which was really huge in the early 2000s. Was like all the things she said. I mean, that was just an amazing theme song. And I know this kind of coincided with that Psycho gimmick that she had, but she came out to that Nicki Minaj theme instead that she was already using before she left the company. And this would be I believe this would have been the first time since 2009 that we've seen Victoria on WWE TV. So just to see her back was amazing. Yeah, so Rhea Ripley would also appear in the Rumble match, and she would actually get one of the most eliminations in this match. Yeah, she eliminated like 7 wrestlers in this match, which is very amazing. And I believe Shayna also had the second most eliminations that night with 6. Mickie James also made an appearance, and she didn't get any eliminations, unfortunately, but she would be there for a little longer than Victoria, and I guess was it Victoria and actually Jillian and Victoria stayed around for a little longer. Yeah, Tori Wilson also appeared as well, and she actually put up a pretty decent performance, I will say. I mean, she wasn't around for long, but I thought she still looks great for her age, and just looking up her on Instagram, she, being a mother, and she's definitely really good for her age. She's definitely aged gracefully for that matter. But she would get eliminated. Lacey Evans also shows up, and she and Charlotte did have a bit of a stare down for a bit, given what happened during the kickoff show. I was kind of disappointed that they didn't really do much with the both of them. Like, you would think Charlotte will do everything to make sure that Lacey gets put in her place, but they didn't really emphasize on that too much. And, Lacey would be eliminated by Shayna, and Charlotte would pretty much be around for quite a while. And, being Charlotte, obviously, being a multi-time women's champion, so being kind of like the top person in the division. So, and given the fact that she won the Rumble last year, so she was going to stick around for pretty much a good portion of the match. Yeah, Alexa Bliss actually surprisingly showed up and surprisingly got eliminated very shortly. I mean, given so much focus has been on Alexa the past several weeks, like especially with her confrontation with Randy Orton and her chemistry with Bray Wyatt. So by this point, like, Alexa's kind of been brainwashed by Bray, and and Alexa's kind of become more psychotic, and she's kind of going through like a split personality phase. So they've been kind of playing up Alexa Bliss as far as her character is concerned. Like, she's kind of like a big part of not just the women's division, but like a focal point on Raw. So I was very surprised that she got eliminated very quick. Like, she was going through like this transformation phase, and then Rhea Ripley like eliminated her just before she could make that turn. So yeah, that was actually very shocking when the first time I saw that. Ember Moon also made a return. I mean, granted, she had already returned, but on the NXT, just kind of refreshing her character. But yeah, it's cool to see Ember Moon back on like a main roster show like the Rumble, even if it's just for like this one night. But she looks she looked pretty fine in this match, I will say. But she didn't last very long, unfortunately. Charlotte did get eliminated, and it came down to Bianca and Rhea Ripley, so they were kind of going at it. But they were kind of playing up like they were trying to hang on to their dear lives when they're by the ring apron, and there's like, okay, let's calm down, let's just slide back in the ring. And then just duke it out for a bit, and then Bianca eventually eliminates Rhea Ripley, and Bianca would successfully win that match. I would say it was a pretty solid Royal Rumble match as far as the women's division is concerned. So, I mean, it's definitely great to see some old faces, some that we haven't seen in years, like Victoria, for instance. I mean, the Ruthless Aggression era was very dominant throughout this Rumble match. Like, you hardly see anyone from the Attitude Era on here. And I know some people would say it was like, what? Tori Wilson's part of the Attitude Era, but she only came in like during the Invasion, and some folks will claim that the Invasion angle wasn't really part of the Attitude Era, but then again, Tori Wilson was mostly part of the the post Attitude Era, the post like WCW buyout. So I mean, she spent a good portion of WWE from like the summer of '01 all the way up to probably like '08 or '09 when she was last seen as a regular figure on WWE TV. But it's she there was a lot of like some of the old faces, like particularly those from like the Ruthless Aggression era, like her, Victoria, Mickey James, Jillian Hall. I will say I did enjoy the Royal Rumble match. Maybe not as much as some other folks did, but but I will say that like this was still pretty passable, pretty enjoyable. And Bianca Belair won this women's Royal Rumble match, and she's gonna go on to face whoever is the women's champion by the time WrestleMania rolls around. So they kind of left it open for interpretation as to like who's she gonna challenge. Is she gonna challenge anyone from NXT or Raw or SmackDown? Only time will tell. So Bianca Belair won the women's Royal Rumble match, which I think a lot of folks were expecting. It was either her or Rhea Ripley, but Bianca was definitely the odds-on favorite to potentially win the women's Royal Rumble match that year. So props to her, and look forward to see what they'll do with her from here on out. So now we get into the last man standing match for the for the Universal title. I was going to say WWE title, but that had already been defended earlier that night. But the Universal title between Kevin Owens and the reigning champion Roman Reigns. So this is basically another rematch from TLC. And I figured going into it that, when it came to having Roman and Kevin face each other off again, it's like, how do you, like, top off your previous set of matches? And, you did the TLC match. And, I haven't seen the steel cage match that they had on the Christmas episode of SmackDown, but I've heard some good things about it. But then you get to that, to steel cage, to last man standing. It's like, what? Like, maybe they're dragging this feud on unnecessarily. I mean, as great of a worker Kevin Owens is, but it was very clear that he would stand no chance against Roman no matter what. For the most part, it was really enjoyable. And basically, they fought all over the arena and a little bit even backstage, like outside of the stadium for a bit. And there was actually a pretty intense moment where Roman Reigns used a golf cart and plowed through Kevin Owens, kind of like Rikishi, ironically enough, considering that they're blood related. So it's kind of like a callback to Rikishi running over Stone Cold, but instead of a rented vehicle, it was like a golf cart. So that kind of gave me a bit of flashbacks right there. But Kevin Owens actually had some offense as well. Even tried to do a couple high spots to Roman Reigns onto some announce tables, and Kevin Owens just giving him his all and doing everything he can to wear out Roman, which is basically the whole point of this match. And there was actually a pretty infamous spot where Owens used the like a forklift, and he was like climbing up like the top of the pallet, and then did like an amazing like swanton bomb in a Jeff Hardy kind of way. I mean, it was just supposed to be like his standard senton splash that he does, but it came across to me as like the swanton bomb. So I thought that was like pretty cool. So yeah, so they're basically going at it. They eventually take matters back in the arena, like particularly the entrance stage, and then I believe Roman did a spear on KO through the Minitron. I believe, yeah, and then like Roman tried to like handcuff Kevin Owens, but that backfired. So KO fought back, handcuffs Roman instead. Roman can't get out since he's handcuffed, and the referee's making that count. Roman knocks out the first referee, and Paul Heyman, his manager at this point, so he's coming out, and he's doing everything he can to uncuff Roman. Like, the ending kind of gets a bit messy towards the end, so I think that if there's like one gripe I have, as well as what a lot of folks had when they were watching the end of the match. So, like, I believe the second referee came out, and he was like counting. Paul Heyman's like under pressure because he had no idea how to unlock the cuffs from Roman. So like it started to get very awkward, and Paul Heyman can't get him out, and like Roman's like handcuffed against like one of the apparatus of the piers, like one of the props used to I can't describe it exactly, but he's like handcuffed, and I think Kevin Owens cuffed him in a way where it was a lot harder for Roman to get to escape from the handcuffs that Paul Heyman was trying to like use the key, and he's having a hard time. He's not in the right position, the right angle for that matter. I mean, it's such a complicated mess. The second referee stopped the count. Paul Heyman manages to release Roman from the cuffs. Roman ends up using the guillotine choke and wearing out Kevin Owens that way. And so the referee makes that successful 10 count, and Roman successfully retains the Universal title. I will say that the last man standing match, I mean, it was still very enjoyable for the most part. I think the ending of the match kind of hurts it to a degree. And it didn't help matters that the second referee was just counting, and and then he stopped counting, and like Kevin Owens just standing there. It was just so awkward. But the camera angle panned mostly towards Roman and Paul, and not so much KO. But it was just very awkward watching that. And you would think like maybe Roman could have knocked out the second referee, and maybe they could get a third referee come out there and do his job efficiently. But it was a bit of a mess like towards the end. But it doesn't take away too much of the match necessarily. But I think it like taints it, but it doesn't like ruins the entire experience. Because, even up to that point, I mean, that match was like definitely exceeded my expectations. Roman did managed to come out on top, which was expected, and successfully retain the Universal title right there. And now we get to the pretty much the main course of the pay-per-view, and that happens to be the 30 men over the top Royal Rumble match. It was actually announced that Edge and Orton was going to start off the match. I believe originally they had Edge start off like number 2 and Orton number 1, but they decided to like flip their numbers around, so Edge would be starting off number 1 and Orton would be number 2. Just seeing Edge and Orton squaring off again for the first time since, I think, Backlash. And Edge would be in the Rumble match for quite a long time, almost about an hour. And, Orton would also be, like, he would still be in the, like, qualified for the Rumble, but at some point Orton had to get taken to the back. So, I mean, he didn't necessarily get eliminated officially, but he had to, like, get taken to the back due to the enduring blows that he sustained from Edge. Like, I believe like Edge did a execution on Orton through the announce table, and they were kind of brawling a bit at ringside as well. A lot of the enduring blows that Orton sustained had him get taken to the back, so he would be out for pretty much almost throughout the match, basically. Sami Zayn also showed up, being the first SmackDown superstar to start off the Rumble match. Jeff Hardy also makes an appearance and surprisingly gets eliminated very quickly by Dolph Ziggler. So I was not expecting Hardy to get eliminated that quick. I mean, considering the fact that this guy's done so much for the business and being a multi-time WWE champion. So it was very shocking that, Jeff would get eliminated like in a short span of time. Yeah, so Dolph would also stick around for a little longer. Shinsuke also stuck around for a little bit longer too before getting eliminated by Baron Corbin. We do get a surprise appearance from Carlito. He wouldn't be around for long, and he would get eliminated by Elias. Pretty much 2/3 of the New Day also competed in this Rumble match, particularly Big E and Xavier Woods. I believe Kofi Kingston had to sit out of this match due to an injury. The Miz and Morrison also make an appearance, and eventually they would get eliminated. Yeah, Bad Bunny was actually performing in the Rumble pay-per-view that night, along with Booker T, who was guest starring in his music video, and he even got to show up in the Rumble pay-per-view that night, but didn't compete. So Bad Bunny and Miz had this confrontation during a backstage segment, and Bad Bunny wasn't pleased by Miz's attitude, so eventually Bad Bunny comes out and plays a part in causing Miz and Morrison the elimination. And then there was a moment where Bad Bunny did a flying crossbody onto Miz and Morrison. We do get appearance from Daniel Bryan and Kane, so we get like a little Team Hell No reunion, which I thought was pretty cool. And a little flashback where Daniel Bryan was offering a hug to Kane and Kane exchanging back, but that wouldn't last. Kane would get eliminated very quickly. Hurricane also made an appearance as well. Hurricane looked pretty. I don't know if out of shape is the best way to describe him, but he's definitely bulked up since then. And there was actually a pretty much of a callback, if you remember, like in 2002 when he tried to choke slam Stone Cold and Triple H, and pretty much like last time that backfired. So I mean, Hurricane would eventually get eliminated by Big E and Bobby Lashley. Speaking of them, they also kind of had a moment to duke it out as well, so I thought that was really cool. Christian also made a surprise appearance, so I was not expecting that. I mean, much like Edge, I mean, these two guys could still go. And I'm just very disappointed that we never got to see, Christian come back in front of a live crowd. I mean, thanks to this pandemic that's going on. So, that's very unfortunate. And, speaking of the pandemic, I mean, this is the first Royal Rumble pay-per-view to be hosted during this period where there's hardly any crowds or any live crowds for that matter. It's just such a weird time, especially like not just like in WWE, but just like the whole world in general. It's still amazing, nevertheless, that Christian made his one-off return, I guess you could say. And yeah, he could show that he could still go. And I just love the bonding just to see him and Edge, and they're doing their flash photography that they used to do back in their heyday. So Bryan ended up getting eliminated. I was hoping Daniel Bryan was going to win this year's Rumble match just to make up for what happened about 8 years ago. But back in 2014 when he should have been in there and won it, but I figured they would make up for it, but that wasn't the case here. Bryan would get eliminated by a returning Seth Rollins. So the instant that Bryan got eliminated, I knew that Edge was going to win this Rumble match. And, I'm not too angry. I mean, I'm very glad that, Edge got his moment and lived up to his word that, he was going to come back and not only compete in the Rumble match, but to potentially win it and successfully regain the belt that he never lost, that amazing comeback story. So, in a way, I could, understand, why they did what they did. And, normally I'm against folks that just come back and just win win a Royal Rumble match, like when Batista came back, when he looked so out of shape and just had no place being there. As far as Edge's side of the story is concerned, I mean, at the same time, I guess you could make it an exception to that rule. I mean, especially since his, comeback story. I mean, we all thought Edge wasn't going to come back to wrestle again. We all thought that all the injuries that he sustained over the years kind of took a massive blow to his body to a point where he had to announce his retirement like 10 years ago, hard to believe. And now, fast forward 10 years later, it seems like all that's coming full circle and that Edge is going to, Edge just came back last year, which was very amazing. And just to see him, try to, show that he could still go despite his age. And now that he's won the 2021 Royal Rumble, so it does lead to a lot of interesting scenarios. It's like, who's he going to face at WrestleMania? Is he going to face, the WWE champion from Raw, or is he going to face the Universal champion from SmackDown? So there's definitely a lot of interesting scenarios that they could go through. And I know we have Elimination Chamber and Fastlane to go through, so it does kind of leave things up for interpretation. We will just have to wait and see how that'll turn out. Like, a lot of folks are speculating that he might go after Drew McIntyre's WWE title if he does hold that belt until then, which I highly likely that he'll take it to WrestleMania. And same with Roman Reigns. Like, I could see him taking that belt to WrestleMania as well. So, I mean, spear versus spear. So I think they could have sold Edge versus Roman to be of that sort. The possibilities are endless, as they say. And I know it's cliche, but you know, it does lead to a lot of, like I said, interesting scenarios, so to speak. So, what you guys' thoughts are concerning about the 2021 Royal Rumble? Leave down your comments in the comment section below. And thank you all guys for watching. And until next time, this is Jimmy signing out. Take care, everyone.